Hi everybody, it's Amanda with Be Love Crochet. I'm coming to you with another free tutorial on how to make this Suzie Messy Bun Beanie. So the reason I call it the Suzie Messy Bun Beanie is because I'm using the Suzette stitch, which is one of my favorites, and my aunt's name happened to be Suzie. Well, Sue, we call her Suzie sometimes. So this looks a little maybe more complex, but it's actually quite simple to make. And it is adjustable. This pattern is for the average size woman's head. My head measures 22.5 inches, and that's exactly the measurement for the average woman's size head circumference. So for today's tutorial, you're going to need some supplies. I'm using Vannas Choice Line Brands yarn in a size 4 medium weight, and it does call for a 6mm crochet hook. This is the colorway Heathered Silver Heather, and I actually really like this color. I went with a little bit of a darker color, but not too dark, just so you guys can maybe see my stitches a little bit easier. This is 145 yards, and this will actually you can finish one of these beanies using one skein of yarn, if you're following my pattern. If you do want to adjust the pattern, all you have to do is a multiple of 2s. So you can adjust it either way. I'll show you the pattern, and then you would just do a different number. You'll need your 6mm J hook, a darning needle because we're going to have to weave in just a couple of ends, and then a stitch marker just to help you out a little bit with where you're starting and stopping. And of course you always need a good pair of scissors. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's find my yarn. Where's the beginning? There it is. So to start, we're going to have to make a slip knot, which you need to do with pretty much anything in crochet. You make your slip knot. I do have other tutorials on how to do that if you're not quite sure how to do that yet. And then we're going to need to make a chain of 8. So how to make a chain? You yarn over and pull through the loop. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now we need to go back down this way, so we're going to skip this stitch next to our hook and go into the second stitch there. And single crochet all the way down, and you should end up with a chain of 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this last one is 7. So from here, we're going to chain 1 and turn our work. Now this part right here, we're starting from the bottom of the hat and going up. This is our ribbing. So what I do for my ribbing is I go through the first 2 loops on the first one next to my hook there, and then we're going to go into the back loops for these next stitches, but when we get to the last one here, I'm going to go through both loops of those as well. So if you turn your work towards you, you'll see these V's. This loop right here, this is the front loop. This is the loop closest to you. So what you're going to want to do is actually go into the back loop. So go ahead, take your hook and insert into the back loop right there. Yarn over, pull up your yarn, and do a single crochet. So you're going to go and do that down this whole row here. There's your V, there's your front loop, there's your back loop. Now this video, I will show you a little bit of stuff, you know, just maybe a refresher or whatever, but I am going to be going a little bit faster. I guess this isn't as beginner friendly as my other video, but so here, right here, if you turn that towards you, that's your last loop, and you're going to go through both of those. Okay? Yarn over, pull up your loop, yarn over, pull through both, and then chain one. And this just creates a nice ribbing texture. It's kind of our crochet way of knitting. Anyways, you're going to repeat this. You're going to go through both those loops, and then here you're going to go through the back loops only, and then when you get to here, do your single crochet, chain one. So we're going to do this for 62 rows, and then I will meet you back to show you your next step. So I went ahead and I did that for 62 rows. That's kind of what it's looking like at this point. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into this first single crochet on that side of your band. You're going to find your yarn, and then you're going to pull through that loop and then pull through the other loop on your hook. So now you just attach that end to that end, and now what I do is I always just chain one. I don't know, it's a habit. I think it secures my work a little bit better. So now what we're going to do is do the same thing down the whole thing, except we're going to go through that stitch on that side, and then we're going to go through this stitch and yarn over, pull up your loop, and then single crochet those two together. Same thing, find your next stitch on this side, put your hook through that stitch, find your next stitch on the other side, put your hook through that stitch, and single crochet. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to do this up the whole band, attaching the two together. And then when you get to the end here, I'll go ahead and I'll just do this with you on camera. I'm almost there. Sometimes that tail gets in the way there. So some people, when they attach the two together, they turn their work inside out because they like the way it looks. I actually like, because it almost looks like more ribbing, so I don't do that. I just leave my two together like that and don't flip it inside out. So here's your last stitch that you need to single crochet together. Sorry about that. Sometimes I get out of camera view. So we're going to single crochet that together. That's what the band is going to look like. And then I'm going to go ahead and chain one. And to make this as even as possible, you're going to do a total of 62. We did a total of 62 rows. So you're going to do a total of 62 single crochets around your headband. And the best advice I can give you, how I get mine a little bit more even, is if you look at the top of these rows, how you made your ribbing, you have the top of them, you have a hole in each. So that's one hole, that's one hole, and there's one at each top of the ribbing. So if you look at it here, you have a ribbing, you should have a stitch to go through there. If you look at this, you should have a stitch to go through there. So what I do is I'm going to go through this first stitch and kind of go over my tail for a little bit. I'm not going to crochet over the whole thing because I'm going to show you how to weave that end. And I actually weave in my ends, but I also tie them off because I'm worried about them coming out in the wash. So I'll show you how to do that, you know, when we get to it. So that's one single crochet. And if you need to, you could go ahead and you could take your stitch marker and put it through that first stitch that we made. So here's two. If you look at the top of that ribbing, there's a stitch, so 3. And then you can see your next stitch is right there next to the one we just made. That's 4. And see, you went through that stitch. That would be your next one, 5. So go ahead and do this around the whole band, and you should end up with 62 single crochets. So I'll go ahead and do that off camera, and then I'll show you what to do next. Alright everybody, so I went ahead and I left it actually on 60 so I can show you. I'm going to go, so I did 1 single crochet in the top of that ribbing, so that's 60. I'm going to go 61 here. And then I'm going to do my last stitch in here for 62. So now we have our stitch marker. We're going to remove it. And we're going to make sure to slip stitch into this stitch right here. And from here we're going to chain 2. We're going to skip this stitch, and then in this stitch we're going to start our Suzette stitch pattern. So what we're going to do is go into that stitch, do a single crochet, and then a double crochet. And that's how you do a Suzette stitch. It's very simple, but it's a very nice pattern. So again, skip this stitch and this stitch. Well, let's put our stitch marker, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little sidetracked here. We're gonna go ahead in that chain 2 space. If you want to, go ahead and put your stitch marker right there. So again, skip this stitch. You're gonna do a single crochet and a double. Okay, skip this stitch right here, and in that stitch you're going to do a single crochet and then a double. Okay, again skip that stitch and then go into that stitch, pull up your loop, do your single, and then do your double. So that's going to be your repeat for the row around, and you need to make sure you end up of 31 clusters of this Suzette stitch. So how to count that is you could pull your stitches apart, and that single and that double counts as 1 Suzette stitch. So go ahead, repeat that pattern all the way until you get to your stitch marker, and I'll show you what you need to do there, but make sure you have a total of 31 Suzette stitches. Okay everybody, I went ahead and I went around. This is 30, so I need to do one more set of Suzette stitch. So what I'm going to do is skip this stitch like you did with all the rest, and I'm going to put my last Suzette stitch right next to that slip stitch. So go ahead and insert your hook, do your single crochet, and then your double. Okay, and to end this row, you're going to remove your stitch marker, and then in that chain 2 space, you're going to go ahead and insert your hook and do a slip stitch. And from here, you're going to chain 2. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back this way. So what I'm going to do is turn my work and actually flip out my work to go back this way. So go ahead and take your stitch marker after you do that. Put it right there at your chain 2. And the way you do the repeat rows of a Suzette stitch is you're going to skip your double crochet stitch, and you're going to do your Suzette cluster in that single crochet. And how to figure that out, right here, if you look and you pull apart your yarn, that is a bigger stitch. And then up here, the space is kind of narrow. So right here, if you pull apart your work, it's much smaller stitch and the gap is actually bigger. So we're going to go into that stitch here, do your single crochet and your double. Okay, so here again, here's your double crochet, there's your narrow space. You need to go in that big fat crochet stitch right there. So we're going to skip this stitch and do our next Suzette cluster here. Okay, and that's just the repeat for this row and for every row coming. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to skip that double, go into my single, make my Suzette stitch, and you still should end up with 31 Suzette stitch clusters. Okay, so skip that stitch, go into your big gap there for your single crochet from your previous Suzette stitch. Make your single and double. Oops. Okay. And repeat that until you get to your marker, and I'll show you what to do next. All right, everybody, so I went ahead and I completed the row. I have 30 Suzette clusters. And my last stitch, remember, you're going to skip that double crochet stitch from the previous Suzette, and you're going to go into that big gap for your, that's the single crochet from the previous Suzette. And this will be 31 stitches. Now, if you do end up modifying this pattern and doing a bigger size, a smaller size, whatever it may be, you just remember when we did that first round, you ended right next to your slip stitch. You need to make sure that's what happens when you modify your pattern. So from here, we're going to remove again our I'm sorry, I'm getting tongue twisted. You're going to remove your stitch marker, and you're going to again go ahead and make a slip stitch into that chain 2 space. Pull my hook right out. All right. Go ahead and chain 2. And again, what we're going to do is put our stitch marker back on there if you would like to. And then again, we're going to turn our work to go back this way, and we're going to flip it inside out. And that's what you do. You just keep on repeating this over and over. And then I went to row 12. Now you can make this a little longer if you want to. But like I said, my size circumference is 22.5 inches, and that's the average women's size circumference. So again, remember, you're going to skip this stitch and go into that small stitch and do your single and double. And so like I said, I'm going to do 12 rows. That fits my head. If you want to do a couple more rows, you can, but go ahead and repeat this pattern until you get to row 12, and I will show you how to decrease, and then we're almost done. Isn't that crazy? This is actually a pretty simple pattern. So again, you're going to do your single, double, go into your next single from your previous Suzette stitch and do your single and double. Same thing. You see your big single crochet from the previous Suzette, do your single and double. So go ahead and repeat that for the remainder. Do 12 rows. It is going to look a little boxy, and I promise that's normal. I will show you exactly what to do to go ahead and make your decrease at the top here. It's actually really simple, and then we're almost done. Yay! So go ahead and do 12 rows. I'll meet you back here, show you how to decrease, weave in a couple of ends, and then you'll have your Suzie Messy bun hat. All right, I'll see you in a minute. All right, everyone, so I went ahead and I did a total of 12 rows. Now I want to show you right here. In most patterns, you can really see where your join is. And if you look really close, you really can't tell too much on this hat pattern, which I really enjoyed that. So if If you hate that kind of seam that you end up with, this stitch actually does a really good job at hiding it. So anyways, I'm going to show you how to decrease. I did my chain 2. We're going to go into the first single, we're not turning our work and going this way. We're going to actually just do 2 rounds of single crocheting in that single crochet from the previous Suzette stitch. So go ahead and insert your hook in the first single crochet and do a single crochet. So this is your double from the previous Suzette. We're going to do a single into there. There's your double. Go into your single and do a single crochet. And this is what you do the whole way around. You skip that double and go into that single from the previous Suzette stitch. And what that does is it just brings in your work and ends up decreasing. It's actually a really simple way to decrease on this hat. Skip that double and go into the single. Okay, so go ahead and do that the whole way around. If you need to rewind, go ahead and rewind. And you can see where I'm going in my stitches. I'm trying to do this as slow as I can and as easily. So there's your double. You're going to go into your single. See how it's kind of starting to bring in the hat? So go ahead and do this around the whole length of the head, or of the hat. And I will meet you at the beginning and I will show you your next step. Alright everybody, so I went ahead and I went around the head, and as you can see, it's pulling it in and decreasing the stitches because we're only doing a single crochet, and that's taking out that double crochet and making the decrease. So right here, if you do get a little confused, you need to make sure you end up with 31 single crochets. So right here, here's our double, here's our last single. This will be 31 single crochets for me. Okay, we're going to go ahead, remove our stitch marker. We're going to slip stitch again, chain 2, and then we're going to single crochet in each single crochet around the whole hat. The reason I chain 2 there is it just makes it easier to slip stitch. You don't have to chain 2, you could do a chain 1, that's what most people do. But here just decreases it a little bit more even, and it makes it look neater. So I always do 2 rows of this single crochet decrease. So that's all you do for this round, is you go into each single crochet from your previous round until you get to your chain 2 space, and then we'll make a slip stitch and we're almost done. So go ahead and do that around the whole hat, and I'll meet you right back here and show you your next step. Alright everybody, so I went around and I single crocheted in each stitch around. Here I have my chain 2 space. I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook and do the slip stitch. Okay, you're going to cut your yarn, leave a little tail there so you can weave in some ends. So go ahead and cut your yarn. Take your hook and act like you're going to do a single crochet and pull that yarn through and secure that. And look at that, everybody. Isn't that like, look at how easy that was to decrease. I am so happy that, because I'm not a fan of decreasing sometimes. I know it's necessary, but yes, I try to make shortcuts. So that's what it's looking like at this point. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take our darning needle, because we gotta weave in our ends, everybody. We're gonna put that through, and you know, I just go ahead, I go through just any old stitch just to pull that through. Let's see if this is inside or outside. So this is the outside, so I'm going to go ahead and finish through this side, because I'm going to flip this in a second. And then go ahead and I just kind of pick stitches and try to make them as inconspicuous as possible. And then I always go back through a couple of stitches. Just find as many as you can. And this is what I do. I'm a little different than most. I pull that through and then I leave that loop on there. And then I tie it. I don't weave in a bunch of times because I found through my laundry, even if I weave my ends very, very well, they still come out in the laundry. So that's how I do it. I just weave it in down to where you're not going to see the knot on the hat, and I tie it. And then I go ahead, take my scissors, snip that off, and that's it. Go ahead and do the same thing to this little guy here, and that's it. That is your hat, you guys. If you have any questions or you have any suggestions of what you'd like to see, go ahead and leave a comment below. I do have more videos coming, but yeah, let me give you a better look at this. Oh, gotta exercise. I'm a little sore from all the crocheting, but I love it. So, yeah, that's what the finished product looks like. See how you have your decrease, and then it was so easy. It was just 2 rounds of single crochet. You have your ribbing and you have your beautiful Suzette stitch. So go ahead, subscribe. I do have more videos coming. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope it was fairly easy for you to follow. God bless, and I will see you in the future for more crazy tutorials. All right, thank you. Bye.